Welcome to another episode of Season 7, Paige's Lessons. If you identify as someone who is ambitious, goal-driven, and a badass, you've come to the right place. As a life coach, I made it my life's work to help goal-getters just like you overcome any obstacle as it relates to going after what you really want and making an impact along the way. As this season is titled Manifesting Your Dream Lifestyle, in every episode I will interview a guest who gives their unique perspective and wisdom around manifestation techniques, advice, and sharing empowering stories that will inspire you to never give up on your dreams. If you're listening to this mini-series, perhaps you feel a tad stagnant in your life because maybe the goals and desires have not come true yet. You may feel self-doubt because the dream lifestyle has not even happened yet, even though you have tried so hard to work on it. Don't worry, I've been there too. And this season will truly change your life. I know that's a bold statement, but I really mean it because I'm asking my guests specific questions with you in mind. My hope for this mini-series is for you to start manifesting with more ease and trusting yourself in the process. While I have personally manifested several things in my life, which is why I'm so passionate to dive right into this topic, I would rather add more value to the show by interviewing these experts because they are very intelligent and inspiring people. Please make sure to review the show notes for every episode because I created specific timestamps of each question so you can easily access the manifestation techniques, tools, and expertise. By the time you finish listening to every episode, you will walk away with at least one thing to work on, whether that's a journal prompt, an activity, something relevant for you as it relates to manifesting the life of your dreams. If you're ready to debunk some manifestation myths, gain some clarity on your next steps, then let's dive right into the magic. Our guest today is Megan, holistic therapist, speaker, author, and CEO of the Self-Care Space, helping women learn to choose themselves. Megan holds many titles with 11 plus years of experience leading women back to their most authentic self. She's the creator of the Love Alignment Method and the Self-Care Space, which has helped thousands of women create transformation in their lives and relationships. Megan believes people should listen to their own inner compass above all else, but sometimes we need to hear it from the outside first for it to really click. She's a huge advocate of doing the research and has personally applied everything that she teaches in her own life before sharing it. Megan and I are chatting about how core values inform our manifestations. I can't wait for you to hear this awesome episode and where the conversation takes us. I met Megan through a mutual friend back in 2022. And I'm so glad I did because Megan is just one of those kindest, most badass queens that I know. I have been working as an advisory board member for the Self-Care Space since 2022, and she welcomed me on her company, and I've been life coaching with the people from that space. And so Megan will give you some more details about her business, and the Self-Care Space is also linked in the show notes for you to look through. But overall, it's just such a wonderful community and support and just a great platform to be a part of because I've coached several clients throughout the years through the Self-Care Space, and I'm just so grateful for Megan to introduce me to that and to just be on my team. She has always just been so supportive of my professional endeavors, my personal journey. When I was solo backpacking, I actually did a workshop with her community and just kind of filling them in on, hey, like you could do this, you can set your mind to it. So she always has provided me opportunities to share my journey and my coaching advice. So I'm just so grateful for Megan, and I'm so ready for you to dive in and hear Megan's story about manifestations. Hey, Megan, how are you?
Hi, Paige. I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing so well. Thank you so much for being here and saying yes to being a guest on the show.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure.
Before we begin our manifestation discussion today, please tell the listeners a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I am based in the Pacific Northwest. I'm from the Seattle area originally, but have lived a little bit all over. I spent over 10 years living in California, a few years living in New York, a few years living in Europe. I spend a lot of time traveling. I just got back from a 6-week adventure over in Europe and leading a women's retreat in Ireland, which is where my mom is from. So that place is really special to me. I am a freak and tend to like that kind of rainy, cold, gray weather more than sunshine. Having lived in Southern California for as long as I did, I kind of got made fun of a lot for how much I complained about year-round sunshine. I think I'm a little bit of an anomaly in that way, more of a winter girly. But that being said, I am very much enjoying Seattle summer right now. I love to do outdoorsy things like swim in the lake and go for hikes and be in nature as much as possible is very much my happy place. That is where I ground and feel most connected to myself. And anybody who knows me also knows that I really like to play and be upside down and do handstands and things like that. So I go outside and do lots of that all the time. And if I'm not doing those things, then I am probably in my kitchen dancing, listening to music, and cooking. Also, favorite activities of mine. I've got a whole vinyl collection that I love and just, yeah, love jamming to some good tunes and eating good food. And I could probably go on, but those are some of the highlights of who I
That's
am.
so fun. Yes, I love it. You definitely, I think we're a lot alike with environment is very important. So just
Huge.
where you live is, of course, you have the community aspect, but but weather is a really big deal, folks. I mean, I know for sure, like it'll change your mood. It'll really impact your mood. It'll impact your mindset. So I always stress environment in my work with clients and just like getting them to journal and reflect of like, is this place make you happy? Where do you go on vacations? Like, notice some themes here, like why that makes you happy. And for you to say that you are a winter, rainy, girly, I mean, of course, like Seattle's for you. Like, that makes so much
Yeah.
sense. So I really love that we really take in consideration where we physically are to help kind of like live that authentic version of ourselves.
It really does matter so much. And for me as well, like my physical surroundings, like the landscape that I'm seeing, being able to see beauty on a regular basis, maybe it's the Libra in me, but really, really matters to me. And I think that exact same thing, what you said, like, especially when the seasons are changing around here and I get to appreciate the uniqueness of each season. I look around and I'm like, I feel like I'm on vacation. Like, this is such a beautiful place. I can't believe I get to live somewhere that makes me so happy. And I think as much as possible, like we should all get to feel that way about the environment that we live in, even in just little micro moments.
Absolutely. And just like I'm in California now, so there's only
Yeah.
so much, especially like I mean, California in general, of course, can experience all the seasons, but like maybe you're in somewhere, a location that doesn't experience all four seasons, but you love that. You love that it
Yeah.
maybe only has one or two, like that works for you. So anyway, I like this little environment tangent, but like also just we both share that passion for travel. So we
Yeah.
do get to also experience like, oh, could I live here someday because this weather's amazing, but oh, that's because I'm here in July. That's why it's amazing.
I will say that's also my biggest problem in life is that I go places and I'm like, I could live here. This is beautiful. I love it. And then my struggle is, but where do I actually live? If I love all of these places, how am I supposed to choose just one? Because I genuinely feel at home in so many of them. But I will say, while we're on this tangent, being in Ireland this past July, they had a rainier summer than usual, and I got some gorgeous days, but I got a lot of rainy days too. And even for me, I surprised myself with how much I was like, I love rain, but like also it's supposed to be warm right now, and I wish it was a little bit warmer. I want a little bit of summer, so maybe I won't be living there full time.
Yes, it's kind of good. It's good to, and also like the seasons of your life, because
Yeah.
maybe there was a time of your life where you're like all about it 100%. And maybe just as like we're getting older too, our preferences changes. So like
Yeah.
this little environment tangent is relevant, folks, to manifestation. I promise we're getting
Oh
there.
yeah. Yeah. It's
This is
huge.
actually just a factor of what to consider when we're building our dream life is hello, where do you live? I mean, that's a pretty
Yeah.
big deal. So,
Yeah.
let's get into it. Every episode of this season in season 7, I just want to highlight a different category regarding manifestation. And as a holistic life coach, I help my clients build a dream life that aligns with their values. So in my sessions, whenever I talk about manifestation, some clients know exactly what I'm talking about. And other clients want to learn more. What do you mean, Paige? How do I manifest? What does that look like into practicality? And my goal for this season is to address as many topics and tips and advice and give real life examples so that the audience can walk away with more clarity on how to manifest that dream life for themselves. And while
Mm.
I've personally created and manifested people, places, and things in my life, I just think it's much more valuable by adding unique voices and perspectives to the podcast. So I am dedicating this season to interview other people and their expertise and their stories to really empower and build the life we all want and are worthy of having. So, Megan, let's get into the first question that I ask every guest on the show. How do you define manifestation?
Yeah. I think obviously manifestation has become such a trendy sort of buzzword in recent years, which is great because more people get to learn about it. But I also think there can be misinformation. And I'm also a believer in getting to create definitions that feel good for you. So for me, when I think about manifestation, I've kind of come into a relationship with it where it just feels like a very intentional extension of you being in alignment with whatever's true for you, with whoever you're being, however you want to be in that season of your life. And I'll define alignment a little bit there too, because I think that can be one of those terms that's like, what does that mean? It sounds nice, but again, buzzword. As a somatic and holistic therapist, I work a lot with helping people be in their bodies more and experience life through their senses in a way that feels more empowered and grounded and alive. And so for me, alignment is that feeling you get when you know you're making the choice that's most authentic for you. Even if it doesn't make sense to anybody else, even if it doesn't make logical sense to you, it just feels true in your body. You feel at peace and at ease. You don't have that anxious, insecure, jittery feeling. It just feels like the truth. And I think that manifestation is kind of the result of what happens when you're in that place.
So it's like the aftermath of living and feeling that authentic version of ourselves.
Yeah, very intentionally, because I think we're manifesting all the time. Like we're creating, whether we are aware of it or not, you're manifesting and creating the world, the environment, the beliefs that you live in. But when you're intentional about it, that's I think more of what we're talking about here. Like how can I choose what I'm wanting to create and go after and experience more of?
Yes. Is there anything, since you mentioned these, it is manifestation is a hot topic. It's a psychopop, whatever pipe psychology term. And is there anything around this word that you want to debunk or clarify for the audience?
Yeah, I think something that can be really helpful, something that I wish I had been taught earlier on, is that it's not just all about thinking positively. I think that there's a lot of information in the realm of law of attraction that's like if you just think positive thoughts and affirmations and you affirm to yourself what it is that you want as if you have it right here and now all the time, then you'll get what you want. And I think that often leads people to feel like if I have a negative thought, I'm going to create a bad result. Or if I have a negative thought, there's something wrong with me. I need to fix that. And that just sort of feeds this cycle of not enoughness and feeling like there's more that's wrong with me, there's more to fix. And now I'm stuck in this loop where I can't have the life I want because I'm having these negative thoughts. The reality is, as humans, we're wired to have negative thoughts. Our brains are always looking for problems because they're threat detectors. Our nervous systems are threat detectors, and that's good. They're trying to keep us safe, and we want that. And we're going to have thoughts of comparison and judgment and days where we don't feel good enough. And it's okay to let that happen. It's okay to be a human who has heavy feelings and not so rosy, shiny, beautiful thoughts all the time, that doesn't mean you're going to create a terrible life for yourself. But again, it just all comes back to that intentionality and being in relationship with, oh, that thought seems to be coming up a lot lately, or that feeling seems to be really present lately. Let me get curious about it, about what that part of me is trying to show me or tell me, what it's here to say, and to not fear it, to let it be okay to have thoughts that aren't pure and perfect all the time, and that you can still create a life you absolutely love.
I love that because it's it sounds like in order to create the life you want, you really need to build the relationship with your identity.
Mm-hmm.
And when you even said, like, let me pause and look into that, right? It sounds like one must be very self-reflective in this process of creating what we want and being able to admit that we want things, right? That maybe in because I know for some people it's like, oh, I'm selfish for wanting this or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, maybe story that's attached to that. And then worthiness comes up and do I deserve this and all that stuff. So, anyway, I wanted to just touch on like what you said of there is a lot of just self-reflection here of, okay, like I noticed this negative thought, for example, let me explore that, but I also am feeling this way and I really want this too. So if both can exist, um, how can we kind of bridge that gap? What could be a helpful maybe tool, so that we can honor both?
Yeah, I think the first is just permission and an acceptance of what is. I think I spend a lot of time, and a lot of people can spend time in very linear black and white thinking where it's either this or this is true. And when I started to practice this sort of idea of contrast and for multiple things to get to be true at once, I sort of was able to breathe more of a sigh of relief of like, okay, I can really, really want this thing. I can have this desire for my life that maybe feels far off, and maybe I have some doubts or questions of how it's going to happen and my worthiness of that thing. And maybe I've never seen it done before, and so I'm just not sure what it would look like. But I want it, and I know that I want it, and it feels good to want it, even though it also feels kind of insecure and not so good at times. That can be true at the same time as I can tap into some sense of appreciation for what I have right now in the absence of that thing. So, I teach a lot about relationships and singlehood. And for somebody who is single and maybe deciding to embrace a period of singleness, like I've jumped from relationship to relationship, let me see what it would be like to finally just be in a relationship with myself and not have to worry about dating for a while. And maybe I find that I really like that. Maybe I find that I'm actually very cool and I like my own company. And so I'm embracing and enjoying and appreciating this period of solitude. And maybe I also still have a desire for relationship in my life at some point, whether it's today or a year from now or however long from now, that both of those things can be true. I can love what is and also have a desire for something to be different at some point. And I think it's just a matter of practicing holding space for both things. So I'd say, if you're asking for a tip, it's almost like a meditative practice, like just sitting down and being with this desire and this seemingly conflicting feeling of appreciation or acceptance, and feeling them both take up more and more space in your body without pushing either one away, and just see what that does. Again, it might give you a little bit of a sigh of relief of like, okay, it's okay to feel what I feel and want what I want, even if it doesn't seem to make sense right now.
Yeah, there's a lot of just honoring, and like you said, it's permission. It's giving yourself permission, and when we do that, I think there's a, I think if we don't give ourselves permission, like no one else, like it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. So
Yeah.
it starts with you, it ends with you. You look in the mirror every single day, and that's you. No one else is in your body, no one else is experiencing it. So life is just so much more peaceful and at ease when we can just be a little more kind to ourselves. The
Mhm.
world is very rough as it is, to say the least. So even that one step of acknowledging the both and I'm experiencing this right now and I still want more is totally okay. And I love that you're also talking about feeling it in your body. And one manifestation tip that I love to use is after I'm very clear on acknowledging, okay, I want this thing, whether that's a car, a relationship, whatever. I then practice in my body that emotion that it evokes, right? Like if it brings me excitement that someone just handed me my new car keys, I do a little shoulder shimmy dance. Like
Mhm.
and if you could just do that with your imaginary keys in hand and close your eyes and feel it in your body, get the goosebumps, like that that really helps us manifest because you're cueing to the universe, oh, like she's feeling that right now.
Mhm.
It's just going to be that much easier for it to happen in real life.
Yeah, that is the manifestation hack. Like if people were only ever going to take one piece of advice when it comes to manifestation and creating a life that is in alignment with what you love, I would recommend that it be that because one, like you said, you're getting yourself into that feeling state where you're sort of vibrating at the same frequency of the thing that you want. And you're going to be much more open and receptive and aware of opportunities when they come your way if you have that open-minded, open-hearted, open body feeling being practiced already. But what's better than that, I think, is that when you do that enough, you realize like, oh, I'm feeling the way that I wanted to feel that I thought this thing would give me, and the thing's not here yet. So it was never dependent on the thing or the person or the job or the place showing up. I can just feel good dancing around my kitchen on a random Tuesday just because, and no one needs to give me permission to do that. That's the life hack right there. We all want the things we think, but it's really the feeling that we want behind the thing.
100%. And it's a practice. It is the
Mhm.
practice to evoke those feelings on our own because just be
Mhm.
careful, kids, when we make those statements of, I will be happy when dot, dot, dot.
Mm.
The dot, dot, dot does
The
not
losing game.
exist.
Yeah.
So, and that's where social media comes in and
Yeah.
gaslights you to think, oh, you're going to be happy when this happens. Now, I think social media can help inspire us
Mhm.
to take action and to get the courage to do the things. And it can still evoke, ooh, that would be cool if
Yeah.
this happened or I received that. Okay, I think take note of that excitement and don't depend on it. Don't rely on it. Don't put all your faith and hope and being into if this happens, then blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, 100%. It's that ability to again hold the desire and then still find the feeling in the here and now before the thing shows up.
Totally. Well, we are both coaches. We both are working with clients that are ultimately trying to live their best life, whether that's creating their dream life or just be more in touch with themselves. And you and I both really stress the importance of values. So, could you
Mhm.
break down a little bit more on core values and how that relates to manifestation?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, again, it's such a pivotal component of this conversation because when we were talking about alignment before, you can't be aligned with something that you don't know exists, right? It's hard to like find your true north if you don't know what north is. So I see core values as essentially those markers on your own internal compass of like, where do I want to orient myself? How do I want to orient myself in the world based on what matters most to me? And the beauty of core values is that they're individual, right? They'll be different from person to person. And I think that there's a couple ways we can go about looking at core values. The first is thinking about what matters most to me based on what I prioritize. So I can look at where am I spending most of my time and attention and energy, and what do I talk about the most? That probably is going to tell me something about what I value the most. And sometimes we might find when we look at it from that perspective that what I'm spending the most time and energy and focus on is actually not what I value the most, and it doesn't feel very good. That's misalignment. That's when we know, like, oh, I've been making choices based on what my family wants for me or what society expects of me, what I think I should do, what I see on social media that I'm comparing myself to. So that's when we have this opportunity to do a little bit more of an honest inventory of what matters most to me if no one else's opinion counted except for my own. How would I spend my time? What would I invest my energy and emotion into? What would I talk about and think about and orient towards? And your core values can apply to your life as a whole. I think we should all have sort of a foundational set of core values that help us inform our sense of self identity. Like, this is who I am, this is what matters to me. And then you can have core values that apply to different areas of life, like your career, your relationships, your health, things like that. But those things in and of themselves can be values. I definitely prioritize well-being and health is a value of mine. So I spend a lot of my money and time and resources on the well-being of my body because I know what it feels like to not feel good in my body. I know what it feels like to not have great health. And that's not something that I'm willing to jeopardize. So I'm going to invest more of myself into prioritizing my health than somebody else who it might not matter to them as much. That might be kind of secondary. Their relationship with their body and their well-being maybe isn't quite as important. Um, so I think that for everybody, again, it's going to be a little different, but sort of distilling down to around 5 is a good place to start. It's really easy when you go through this practice to feel like there's a lot that matters to me. How am I supposed to choose just 5 things? And I think that taking sort of a seasonal approach in that regard can really help. Like, okay, in this season of my life, I'm going to invest more of my time and energy into community building, right? Like, that's really important to me. I want to nurture friendships in this stage of my life that are going to last a really long time. So maybe that means being more intentional about reaching out and spending time with friends or meeting new people and fostering those relationships. Maybe it means improving my communication skills and my relationship with vulnerability so that I can deepen those relationships. Right. So just getting clear on what that means for you. And when you do that, it's going to help you align with that version of you who has the things that you want. Right. If like you want a great relationship, but you have not been willing to prioritize communication or vulnerability or intimacy, or even just making time in your schedule for another person to show up and take up space in your life, then relationship isn't something that you're valuing through your actions. So
Absolutely.
there's a lot more that I could say about it, but I think it's just a really great litmus test for what matters to me and how is that actually showing up in my life? How can I embody the version of me who actually has what I say I want?
So many good nuggets there. That was really great because it definitely can be overwhelming with identifying your values. And like you said, top 5 is a great place to start. Just to give y'all some examples, and feel free to share yours too, Megan. But my top, I'll say top 5. No order. Oh, I want to clarify too. There is no
Yeah.
ranking. It's
Yeah.
not,
One's not
oh,
better than the other.
exactly. It's not like this one for sure beats all of them. It's just, it's a part of the list. And for me, I would say curiosity,
Mhm.
adventure, play, authenticity, and creativity. If I didn't already say that,
Mm.
but I say it
Yeah.
all.
Yeah, those are 5. Those are good ones.
And just like Megan was saying, once you've identified them, they will show up in multiple areas of your life.
Mhm.
Season 2, I talk about pillars of your life where I interview an expert on each category, like money, relationships, spirituality, etc. So like make sure to check out that. But every area of your life is going to bleed into the next. So when you identify those top core identity values, which also can and will change over time, depending on the season of your life. But once you identified those, it is you're much it is much easier to clarify, am I in alignment or not? Is this towards that manifestation or not? And just a quick example too of like how values change over time, because from age 0 to 18, I was instilled by my parents that education is the number one value. But that
Mhm.
was my parents' belief. And as I grew older, not saying education isn't important, but it just wasn't my top five anymore.
Mhm.
So, and all of these terms, right? I say curiosity, you say health, we could have different definitions. So it's
Mhm.
really beautiful to get clear on your values and how you define them.
Yeah, absolutely. Those definitions really do matter. Because again, it helps you clarify like how is this showing up in my life? And it also helps you then relate to other people better. Curiosity is one of my core values as well. And I bet if we were both to share our definitions, there would be some overlap where we could go, oh my gosh, me too. And we connect on that. And then there'd be some differences that would help me get to know you better and you get to know me better. So it's a good way to deepen your relationships when you bring this conversation in as well.
I think values are, I mean, I obviously like value self-development. And because I mean, duh, look at my career. But because I value self-development, I then want other people in my life, professional and personal, and relationships, right? I want my next partner to also value what I value. So you're kind of just attracting more and more like-mindedness, which is just getting into law of attraction in general, right? Like I want more of this in my life. This
Mhm.
is the vibration and energy I'm putting into it. So, um, do you think once someone has identified their values, is there like what could be another step to then start manifesting, or do you have any other tips or advice for them?
Yeah, I think a great sort of internal self check-in when you go through this process of identifying your values is to then compare and contrast, like, how am I living my life right now? Where am I spending my time and energy? And does that match up with the things I say I value? And if not, let me look at what's in that gap. And that's where we get to start practicing manifestation. So if you value adventure and you've been living a life where you're chained to a desk, where you work 80 hours a week and you can never really get out for even like a little weekend trip, let alone a big grand adventure, what would have to change in your life in order to prioritize adventure more? So you can think about it in sort of like a grand sense, but then you can also get granular and specific with it. Like, okay, here's an adventure that's been on my bucket list. I've always wanted to go to this country or do this specific thing. What would it take for me to create the time and space and money and whatever it takes to make that happen? And again, if I'm starting to live in alignment with my value, then I'm naturally going to make choices that make more space to honor that outcome. And then maybe I do take that specific trip, maybe lots of other adventures happen as a result. But
Mhm.
I think that first step is like, where am I out of alignment with these things I say I value? And what would I put in that gap? What would help me get closer to the
Mhm.
value?
Yeah. And if this seems like really overwhelming, folks, too, like, reach out to Megan, reach out to me, reach out to people on this podcast that I've interviewed, because we want to help you create your dreams. Like, don't feel like you have to do this alone. And
Mhm.
also hiring a therapist, a coach, whoever that service is going to help you get there faster.
Yeah.
Period. That is the best way to think about it. Is you can do all of this by yourself, and I mean, I did a lot on my own. I'm
Mhm.
33, and you're learning 33 years of trial and error. And that's what I put in my content. That's what I share with my clients. I give that self disclosure when appropriate of, hey, this is my journey. But when you work with people in this space and that are very passionate to work with you, that are inspired, you're just going to elevate so much faster.
Mhm.
and they will be able to see things that from a bird's eye view that you cannot.
Yeah.
And there's only so much that friends and family can do for you,
Mhm.
because friends and family are biased. They love you, but they might not give you that tough love or that feedback, because they love you and want to protect you, right? So it's great to hire someone like Megan or myself, because there's nothing we probably haven't heard of, you know?
Yeah.
So I did just want to like kind of plug that for you, because Megan created this beautiful self-care space program. I mentioned a little bit on the recording of her intro. But yeah, if you want to like talk a little bit about the self-care space, and because I'm a part of that too, and what inspired you to create that.
Yeah, thank you, Paige. I appreciate that. And you're so right. I think working with somebody is a little bit of an accelerator to, help call out your blind spots and then also feel supported and held and safe to be able to make mistakes and go for it and make changes. I think when we're doing it all on our own, it can feel scary to do it without a roadmap, without help, without guidance or support. So that's definitely valuable as well. And the self-care space was really my answer to sort of the middle ground of I think there's people on the self-development journey who are all in and they're like, I want to work with all the coaches and therapists and practitioners and like, give me all the knowledge. I'm reading all the books. I want to do everything. And also might be in a position where they are able to invest in themselves at that level in their journey. And that's wonderful. And I remember a time in my life and in my inner healing and exploration journey where I wanted all the things. I wanted more support and access and resources and tools, but I couldn't quite afford it, right? I couldn't hire every single therapist and practitioner and coach that I wanted to. And I felt like reading books were only getting me so far. I needed to put more of it into practice. So the self-care space really grew out of this idea of like, how could I put resources and tools and practitioners all in one space for the people who are in that middle ground of like, maybe I'm wanting to take this at my own pace and explore on my own, but still feel like I'm getting guidance and support and feel like I'm part of a community. And that's really what it is just sort of this central hub of self-guided resources with tools and modules and guided practices and journal prompts and workshops with incredible practitioners like yourself and the other wonderful women on our advisory board. Um, and then the community who just kind of makes you feel less alone if there's a question that you have or you're going through it and you're like, am I the only one who feels this way? You are not the only one who feels that way, but sometimes you just need that reminder. So thank you for that. The self-care space is like what I dreamed of when I was first starting out on this journey. And it's really cool to have a place that offers that support to other women.
Absolutely. And I still talk with, the members on that, like, and that decided to work with me one on one. Like, I still talk with them and check in, and it's just such a beautiful platform. Make sure to look at the show notes, that link below. It's also very affordable, so make sure to check that out. But that kind of segues into, because that's a baby you manifested, right? That is a
Mhm.
beautiful creation. So do you have maybe one story of something else you manifested?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many, it's hard to choose, but I think sometimes when we're hearing stories of manifestation, it can help to hear the more tangible ones, like the specific things, rather than more general, like values-based things. So I always love to talk about the experiences that I've had manifesting places to live, because for whatever reason, that's something where when I get in alignment and when I get clear, it just happens. All the pieces fall into place perfectly, even if there's a that gap period of like, oh, it hasn't shown up yet. Is it going to show up? It's down to the wire now. And I've had that experience when I was living in California. I had a few places that I lived where it felt like that kind of secret sauce. I wasn't doing it intentionally. I didn't know what was happening at that point. It was just like, okay, I need to move. What would I like? Where do I want to move to? And eventually the place would show up. And when I made my first really big move, which was from LA to New York City, that's when I had already gotten a lot deeper into practices of manifestation, had done a lot more work, kind of clarifying who I am and what I want and what I value. And this was such a big move that I didn't have a lot of support or resources around. It was something I had to figure out entirely by myself and fund entirely by myself and like put all the pieces into place. And there were definitely questions of like, oh my God, how am I going to do this? What is this going to look like? This is crazy. And I just decided, okay, I'm going to use everything that I know, everything that I teach, and just try it, see what happens. So I got abundantly clear on the type of place I wanted to live in and the sort of features or amenities that that apartment would have, and made my list, my sort of specific list of like, it has, it's a 1 bedroom and it's, got these particular like even like appliances in it. Like I wanted a dishwasher because I didn't have one in my last place, things like that. Neighborhood that I wanted to live in. And then the things that were more just preferences, but I was not as attached to. The preferences can really help because what I did from there is then go into the visualization of it and how it's going to feel. So I recorded myself a little kind of guided hypnosis track where I went through the feelings and specifics of what it is I wanted to create for myself. And every night I would go to bed listening to that and imagining myself in this life in New York. And random, out of nowhere synchronicities started to show up. Like I had some time for this move. It was stretched out over the span of about 6 months. And I was, again, sort of really, really wanting it, but trying to not be attached to the when and the how. And I was back in LA at this point, visiting a friend and went to grab lunch at my favorite place in the world, Erewhon, which is an overpriced grocery store, but I'm so in love with it. And was sitting there, and this guy comes up to me, introduces himself. We start having a conversation, and turns out he lives in New York and sublets the place that he lives. He was like, that could be a possibility if you're looking for somewhere. So I was like, okay, really cool. And we start chatting a little bit more. After I leave, we stay in touch. And next time I go to New York, I go to check out his place. Now, I'm of course excited about this possibility because it's in a neighborhood I'm excited about and all the things. It's a beautiful little 1 bedroom place. But he wasn't interested in subletting it like for a long-term lease. He was doing more short-term Airbnb type situation. However, the week I go to visit New York, he finds out that his landlord, the building owner, has another unit available that was being completely gut renovated at the time. And they had been really taking their time with it. But he's like, this landlord said he'd be open to meeting you. So I go and meet him, and they basically tell me that I can do whatever I want with this place. They're in the process of renovating it. And so they tell me, like, you could choose like the cabinets, you can choose the paint colors, you can choose the flooring, choose whatever you want. And I got to design this apartment from scratch and make it exactly what I wanted. And then I moved in like 2 months later. And it was crazy at the time. I was kind of in disbelief, but I was also trying to be like, no, I manifested this. I created this. Like, this is how it works. Right. And it was ultimately a really wonderful experience. And I learned a lot from my chapter living there. And when I had to leave New York a couple years later, which is a whole story in and of itself, but was moving back to the West Coast to Seattle, where I live now, it was the same thing. I had to get really clear on what I wanted, and that was a much shorter amount of time. I had about 2 weeks to make that move happen from New York all the way back to Seattle, and made my list, everything I wanted. There was nothing on the market. I was checking every single day. All of a sudden, this place appeared. It showed up on Zillow. I reach out to the landlord. He does a virtual like FaceTime tour with me. I'm like, I love it. It's amazing. I would love to take it. He's got a ton of other applicants because there was just nothing good on the market at the time. And other people put in like crazy offers. They were willing to pay like many, many months of rent up front and all these things. And I just told him like how much I wanted it and what it meant to me. And he was like, you know what? I really want to give it to you. I think that like you would take good care of this place. And like all the pieces fell into place of like getting the movers, getting my stuff over. And it was one of those things where you get cleared and then you release attachment And somehow it all works out. And you just picture like, what's the version of me who's living that life? Who do I want to be? And what does that feel like? And that has guided me so much. I try to apply that same principle when I'm manifesting other things because it works very well for me in the realm of moving. So I'm like, how can I make that work for me over here?
I love those stories. Thank you so much for sharing that. That just like makes me so happy. I'm like, oh my God, you had to design it. You were so specific and clear. And I love the hypnosis you were listening to. Same here. Like that, those really helped me too, is like listening to even my own voice, like with affirmations and things like that. So thank you so much for sharing that. I love moving stories. Why is it like, but those are so like, even though in the moment too, moving is so stressful. And like, that is like the most like sketchiest manifestation too, because that's where you live, right? Versus like, oh, I want to manifest, whatever, a cup of coffee, like no risk, but this is like a big risk. So,
Yeah.
anyways, but I feel like I'm so good at manifesting those really big, scary things. As sometimes like the little things are like hard, quote, harder, right? So I'm like, there's got to be some taking, it's practice though. And it's
Yeah.
really, I want to emphasize the detachment too. So,
Yeah, the more rigidly attached I get to a specific outcome and how I think it needs to happen, the less it happens, the less
totally.
it shows up. So that's a big lesson for sure.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you for sharing that. And that's why I love hearing people's stories to give people that inspiration and it can happen. Well, I've really enjoyed our time talking. Like, thank you so much for just sharing your words of wisdom. How can people get in contact with you?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's something I really enjoy talking about, and I'm happy to continue to talk about it with anybody who has questions or follow-ups. A couple of the best ways to get a hold of me are either my email or Instagram. So all of the things, my website and Instagram are my full name, Megan Sherer, megansherer.com, and you can find my email on there as well if you have questions or want to reach out or send me a DM. Um, and as Paige mentioned, the self-care space is the self-guided platform that I run. If you're curious about that, can link that as well. There's also some resources in there on identifying your core values, which I would strongly recommend that you do. That's such a good starting point. So if you want kind of some framework for that, we do offer that in the self-care space community.
Perfect. Well, thank you again so much, Megan. I really appreciate it. Did you have fun today?
Oh, yeah, so much fun. I could talk to you for hours and hours and hours. Thank you so
I
much,
I
Paige.
know. I literally wish it never ended because there's so much to talk, like, you can say one sentence and that can be a whole season.
Yeah.
It's a whole season.
Yeah,
But yeah,
I'm happy to come back for part two anytime.
please. Yes, of course. I'm definitely going to have you as a reoccurring guest. So thank you
I
so
love
much,
that.
Megan, for taking the time to share your words of wisdom. Thank you for all the listeners out there. If this episode truly resonated with you, make sure to share it on your socials and tag Megan and I so we can say hello. And remember, every single day provides a lesson. Go out there, dream big, and I'll catch you next week. Take care. Thanks for listening to this episode of Paige's Lessons. I hope you enjoyed it and found it valuable. If you did, please consider subscribing to the podcast and leaving a review. Subscribing and posting a review helps to improve engagement and is essential for the podcast to be discovered by new listeners just like you. Thanks again for tuning in, and remember, every single day provides a lesson. Go out there, dream big, and I'll catch you next time. Take care.